Question number 11, Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Minister is, does he stand by all of his statements in the House yesterday?
The Honourable Pesatara Sam Lottawinga.
Yes.
I apologise for interrupting the Minister. That is not the question that is set down on the question paper.
It certainly is, according to what I have in front of me. It certainly is asked correctly, but we've now got a disrupted flow. I'm going to ask Ron Mark to ask his question again. Order. Order. We have a point of order from the Right Honourable.
I'm trying to help out the senior government whip, but maybe he has different...
Order. I'm not sure that we've got a point of order here anyway. The matter's been disputed. I've got a copy in front of me. Ron Mark asked it correctly. Order, I'm on my feet. The important thing is now that we continue with question time, and I'm asking Ron Mark to ask question number 11. No. Order. 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 We seem to have a technical difficulty, and the way we will proceed is Ron Mark will ask his question, and the Minister will answer the question. And assuming the mics continue to work, then we will operate as normal. Yeah. Number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll repeat the question again. To the Minister of Corrections, does he stand by all of his statements in the House yesterday?
The Honourable Pesatara Sam Lottawinga.
Yes, in the context in which they were given.
That media training's good.
Order. Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Minister aware that under New Zealand law, a person subject to a sentence imposed by a New Zealand court, the effect of which requires the applicant to remain in New Zealand, may not receive a passport regardless of what name they use on application?
The Honourable Pesatara Sam Lottawinga.
Mr. Speaker, my understanding is that prisoners do not automatically lose the right to be issued with a passport, but that is a matter, as I said yesterday, for the Minister of Internal Affairs.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
Supplementary. Is it not a matter for this Minister, though, that the responsibility for ensuring that communications between inmates and agencies outside, communications with inmates and associates outside, that allow them to hoodwink and dupe his other ministers' departments, is his responsibility? Can you confirm that?
Honourable Pesatara Sam Lottawinga.
Mr. Speaker, it is my understanding that corrections are responsible for communications from inside the prison to some agencies outside hospital.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
Is the Minister aware that through the failures of his own intelligence gathering sources of his department and his operational staff, that even in the editorial this morning, his ministry and his government is becoming a laughing stock? And can he assure the people of New Zealand?
Order. I have a point of order from the Honourable Simon.
Mr. Speaker, this is far away from the question that's been asked. I understand what all the statements. And now he's asking for opinions about the editorial in the paper.
Order. No, in actual fact, it's a long-winded question, and that's why it's creating some difficulty. But the question itself is in order. The members then used the editorial that he's found in a particular daily to reinforce his question. The difficulty we've got is the question had been shorter and sharper would have been easier, but I think we've got the gist of it. And if the Minister needs any further assistance with the question, I'll allow Ron Mark to continue, but otherwise it can be answered.
Well, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Pesatara Sam Lottawinga.
Mr. Speaker, clearly in the Smith case, mistakes have been made. We already know that. I'm not happy about that, and New Zealanders aren't either. But the recent review into the incident gave us 13 recommendations to improve temporary releases. We're adopting those, and as Minister, I'm keeping a close eye on their implementation.
Point of order. The point of order, the Honourable Trevor Murray.
Mr. Speaker, I've just been advised from outside of the House that while the lights are working here, the system doesn't appear to be working getting out of the House.
They can't hear us.
Okay.
Let's go back to the start.
Order. There's certainly nothing like it from this position to assist that at this stage. We're going to continue with questions. Further supplementary?
That's a relief, please, Sam.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
Does the Minister, accepting that he is new to this portfolio,
The member please just ask this question.
does the Minister recall previous gaffes by the Corrections Department and previous investigations of their failures? And does he not accept that this latest huge gap, which resulted in a vicious killer escaping custody, is going to seriously undermine the confidence of the public in this department and in the staff if someone doesn't pay the price? And will he give an assurance that those people who fail in this case
We're now getting into speech material. Yeah. Honourable Pesatara, Sam, what are we going?
Shambles said
No.
Good answer.